You're listening to the Level Flight Podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. Welcome back, everyone. We're virtual today because someone, aka me, forgot to book the studio.
You know, it happens, but hey, virtual.
Virtual.
We tried it last week and we didn't get any complaints, so we'll take it.
This is a good opportunity. This is cool.
Yeah.
This should be good.
Absolutely. So this is a big episode for us. This is our trade deadline preview for the Jets. I'm Brian. I'm joined by Connor.
Hello.
And Elliott.
Hey.
And we have a little bit of a plan here for what we're going to be talking about in terms of who the Jets should target. Want to quickly just say we just found out that Vladimir Tarasenko was traded to the New York Rangers for a bunch of guys and a couple picks, and it was a really good deal for the Rangers there.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of view all these trades through that lens because that's really that and the Horvat deal are the only two that we really have a market for, like a market price. So I'm really excited to get into like what we think of the Meyer, like Timo Meyer, what we think the Jets should do for him, because we've seen Horvat be traded for a middle six winger prospect and a one. It's like, well, the Jets should be willing to do that. So it's good to have something to base the market off of. And I don't know about you guys, but I think St. Louis got fleeced out of their mind in that trade, especially since it was 50% retained. But yeah, it'll be interesting to dive in because that's another name off the market.
Yeah, it sets the market. And I mean, like you said, Connor, St. Louis did not really get what they probably could have out of the deal, especially at maybe if it's not retained, maybe that changes the mindset. But since it's being retained, I think the Blues probably should have gotten a little bit more out of what they got. But deal's done, and yeah. So if that sets the market, I think that this might actually be beneficial for the Jets because it might mean that the price point is lower, and we know how much the Jets like trading and giving up assets. So if the market and the price is lower, maybe that'll incline them to make a deal.
Yeah. But before we get into all the trade talk, because I know that's obviously why everyone is tuning in, because trade season is the best season. But
the best.
I want to just quickly touch back on what happened in the last week. Obviously it was the All-Star break. So aside from those games and the skills competition, nothing really happened. Jets are still off for another few days, so it's been a very long, it's going to be 11 days once it's all finished up. But in terms of the actual game and skills competition, Morrissey had an assist, finished third in the hardest shot. Hellebuck won the 10D tandem with UC Saros from Nashville. And one quick little note, Morrissey, heck of an outfit with the pink suit, white shirt, Miami Vice.
I like how nice. I love how Morrissey went like all out, and then Hellebuck's outfit was just like a plain white shirt, and he was like, "Yeah, I just like to keep it simple." Like Morrissey's like right next to him in this full pink, like all dripped out. Yeah, he looked great.
I mean, we'll skip over the whole All-Star festivities just because we don't really want to talk about pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah.
But that just irked me a little bit.
Terrible.
I
could rant about that for a while.
So this could be a whole episode about how bad that was and how much I sat there and went, wait, is this pre-recorded? Are you kidding me? But
yep,
is what it is.
And then so that happened. It was announced that the game's going to be in Toronto next year, so that should be at least a little bit more sort of interesting because obviously it's the biggest market in Canada. So be interesting to see what happens there. But enough All-Star chat. And just before we get into trade talk now, I just want to do a quick little touch on something we've mentioned before, something we're all very passionate about, and that's Zhilkin's vision with Danny and Lauren there. So they just wanted us to do a little bit of a chat here with you guys about how every Monday they, on their Instagram, which is at Zhilkin's Vision, they post accessible information to help you better understand your own mental health and that of others. it helps, raise awareness and promote advocacy and try and get the word out to destigmatize things. And you can find it on, as I said, their Instagram, so at Zhilkin's Vision, or you can search the hashtag ZV Mental Health Mondays on both Instagram and Twitter. So great work for Lauren and Danny there. So just make sure you spread the word on that and keep an eye on it for every Monday. I know this week was burnout, which is obviously something that affects a lot of us. Affects athletes, affects students. It's something that everyone can kind of relate to. So definitely give that a check out and keep an eye on that. So without further ado, let's kick into some trade talk. So
Let's do it.
we're going to start with the biggest names here because obviously they're the ones who are in the news the most. So let's start with the obvious target and the one that I know if you follow us on Twitter, all we're talking about right now, Timo Meier. So he's the biggest thing here is we know that Kevin Cheveldayoff was just in Tampa watching Meier and the Sharks play the Lightning. So that adds just a little bit of extra, intrigue here. But no, he's just an unreal player. He's got 52 or 51 points in 52 games, 30 goals. He's one of those guys where if you have the ability to, put the money out, you should probably go do it.
Yeah, and people will always reference the $10 million qualifying offer that he has coming up. He's an RFA. You can sign him for 1 year for $10 million for next year if that's in the cards. You can also extend him for 8 years because he's 26 years old and one of the best wingers in the league. So you could do that too. But he's worth the money anyways. If you sign him for 1 year at 10 million and then say the Jets suck next year, you can trade him right back. This is a move for this year. Like, yeah, he's a rental with the chance of being extended, but most importantly, he's a rental for this core. This team is second in the Central Division. You want to win the cup now. This is a move for right now. And anything you get 8 years from now is a bonus. And we've said a million times that all of these prospects that are being floated out, their ceiling probably isn't even as high as what Timo Meier is right now. Rutger McGroarty, Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert. You can go down the list. You draft players in hopes that they become what Timo Meier is right now. So I think it's a no-brainer that they have to kick the tires. I mean, I think every Jets fan knows that they need to go all in, and this is the biggest name on the market and the best name on the market. My concerns come where there are other teams like New Jersey, absolutely, that I think can outbid the Jets. The Scott Wheeler does his prospect pool rankings, and the Devils had the second best one in the entire league. The Jets were 13, I believe, or somewhere in the middle teens. But New Jersey has picks. They have an amazing prospect pool, and they could easily outbid the Jets for whatever they want. Do they have the means to do it? That's a whole different question. The Jets should have the means to do it because we've said it plenty of times, but Meier is an outstanding player and would be a huge boost for a team that needs play-driving wingers to balance out the forward lines.
This is their number one target. That's not even a question. But like you said, Connor, I think the big thing right now is what the Jets are willing to give up and what other teams are willing to give up. That's the main caveat of this entire situation is just, okay, well, let's say the Jets throw out an offer. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever you've seen on social media, whatever. Well, there's probably a chance that someone like the Devils can probably one-up it. And so if you're the Jets, you want to be trying to convince the Sharks of, hey, our deal's the best. Go with it right now. And yeah, but we'll see if the Jets need to, I think this needs to be something more of a, like, this is kind of like a franchise defining trade, if that makes any sense for me. The way that I see it is this shows to 1, the core, and 2, the fan base, and 3, other potential free agents in the future. If the Jets are to make this trade and Chevy comes out in a presser at some point to announce that, obviously we'll know that this trade's happened, but he'll do some sort of presser to say, hey, this is the trade, this is the new player, and they welcome him in and they show him off and he's available. What I think he needs to say is, hey, if they make this deal is, hey, this is what we've done. We trust that we've now made deals to support the main core of this team, and it will show the future players that whoever wants to sign here, the Jets are playing well. They're willing to make moves to try to improve the roster. Because currently, right now, if I'm a free agent and I know the Jets are a good team, unless I'm going there because they're already a good team, like this summer, if the Jets continue to be a good team, obviously team players will want to sign. But in future years where they're maybe on the fringe of being a playoff team and they play well and there's an opportunity for them to add, if I'm a free agent, I may look at the roster and go, well, it's not great, and I know the Jets don't trade for anybody. So if I'm not going to make a huge difference, then I'm not going to sign there because we're just going to be a middle of the road team. So realistically, for me, this is also one, a move for this year, two, a future move if we can re-sign him or figure out some sort of contract negotiation. This is also for me a future franchise defining thing.
Yeah, and like that's the thing where you mentioned where it's the whole all in mentality, and it's really it matters too in the sense that even if let's put aside the fact that a bunch of contracts expire after next season, let's just think of it this way. Very high likelihood Pierre-Luc Dubois is moved in the offseason to maximize his trade value. It feels a lot nicer if you have to move him if you have Timo Meier on the team. So I feel like it's one of those things where if you have to move, you good prospects, a good like younger player, you do it because I ranted about this on Twitter last night. We've already talked about it. You want great players now, and if you get good players later, good. But you need the now rather than 4 years from now.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and this is
I
the
think
big swing, right?
Yeah, and I think too, like I think it also looks good for Pierre-Luc Dubois if this is one of their moves to say, "Hey, we want you to stay. We're gonna trade for Timo Meier, and if he signs the extension, I think that looks really good to the Jets." And they go to Pierre-Luc Dubois and go, "Look, we traded for another winger for you because potentially they may be on the same line together, and he's now locked up." And we've got a bunch of the other pieces of the core locked up, and we're going to continue to make sure that this core is together. You would be our last piece, and we'd love to have you. That would be my pitch if I'm Chevy this offseason. If all the right pieces fall into place, that would be what I would pitch to Pierre-Luc Dubois and go, I understand you maybe want to trade, but we'd love to keep you and we'd love to sign you long term because look what we have done to try to make it so that as appealing as possible for you.
Yeah, and this we can move on after this, or if we have any more points, that's fine. But you have to pay good players. All I've seen on Jets Twitter when I bring up Timo Meier is that, oh, but you have to pay him. Oh, but you have to sign him to a 9x8 extension. Oh, he has a $10 million qualifying offer. You can't go through the history of a NHL franchise without paying one player. The Jets paid, I tweeted this out, the Jets paid 32-year-old Blake Wheeler 8.25 by 5. If they have an issue turning around and paying 26-year-old Timo Meier 9x8,
yeah,
that is completely flawed and backwards. And
there's something wrong with the organization, just period.
But like, you're not going to be able, like, Chevy's done a great job signing contracts. You're not going to be able to get away with it for the rest of his tenure as GM, signing players when they're 23 to 7-year deals, and then Kyle Connor being a bargain and Nikolai Ehlers being a bargain. What you have to do is add players like Timo Meier to take advantage of those previous good contracts that you signed and the last 2 years of Hellebuck's amazing contract as well. So
yeah,
I think we're all in agreement.
It opens up.
Yeah,
it opens up cap space by signing those good deals. So you have to capitalize on the opportunities.
Boom.
It's that's what it is, and I think yeah.
And obviously, you want to prioritize the Meier deal, but he's not the only big swing out there. But the thing is too, I'd say the largest of the priority is to add to that forward group to increase the scoring. And we're not actually sure if he's available, but Alex DeBrincat in Ottawa is a pending UFA, and there's been very little talk about extensions. And he's a guy who's he's probably going to be cheaper than Timo Meier. He is relatively proven after his time in Chicago. He's doing a little bit of, a bit of some bad luck, really. That's really the way you can describe it in Ottawa this year, where he really needs to, just convert his chances. And he has in the past, isn't doing it as much this year. But he still has 41 points in 50 games this year. So it's one of those situations where he's having an off year and he's still doing that. He is phenomenal on the power play. And I've been talking about this for a while, and especially Connor can attest. I have mentioned the fit for a deal that also sends Neil Pionk to Ottawa, because Ottawa's been talking about adding a veteran defenseman for the last 3 months. And it frees up salary space. It opens the door for someone else to move in a depth role for the Jets defense, and it improves the overall defensive play of the Jets defense as well. Because let's be real, Neil Pionk is not the best defender. He's got great offensive ability. He's good in the power play, but he's not going to. He's going to drag the the partner down with his poor defensive play. So if you can do something to just upgrade on that a little bit, plus at the scoring of like a DeBrincat, I feel like that could be something you include in a deal. Obviously, it's bigger than that. It's not just going to be Neil Pionk for Alex DeBrincat 1-for-1. If it is, you take that and run. But no, like I feel like he is a target that should be talked about if Meyer is off the table before you start dipping into those secondary targets.
Yeah, I'd say he's more of an option, like if New Jersey outbids the Jets for Meyer, for example. And then to further your point about the extension, I've read a ton of articles that basically say that the Senators are pushing to sign him, but I haven't read one thing that says, "Oh, Alex DeBrincat is pushing to re-sign," or talks are happening. All I've read is from the Senators side saying, "Oh, we're trying to discuss this, but we're not close," or they haven't even had discussions, whatever. But if he makes it clear he doesn't want to resign, Ottawa's in the midst of like a losing season. They're like second or third last in the East right now. If they can't convince him to stay, he would be a lot cheaper than Meyer. He's a top 6 winger. Like you said, he's in a cold shooting streak, but he scored 41 goals last year. Like
Yeah.
he's an elite finisher in a cold streak, and he's still dynamite on the power play. The Jets' power play is 1 for their last 20 coming into the All-Star break, so I'm sure that'll revert back. But I mean, hey, having too many options on the power play, yeah, it does not hurt at all. But yeah, obviously we all are going to sit here and say we want Timo Meier, and Timo Meier is the better player, 5-on-5 power play, whatever. But if you have to pivot, Alex DeBrincat's not a bad pivot option.
Yeah, Alex DeBrincat's a pretty good option, I'd say. I mean, yeah, you'll never hear anything from me if we can trade Neil Pionk, but if that's what it takes to do the deal, by all means, you go right ahead, Ottawa. You can go deal with him. But I would assume it would be something in the realm of like Pionk and a prospect, or like a Pionk and a third, or something. I don't even know.
I think it would be Pionk, a first, and like a B prospect,
probably,
maybe, yeah.
But for me at that point, if Meyer's still on the table, I'd rather go for Meyer. But in this case, let's say that, like Connor said, if Meyer is off the table, then if we have to do that for DeBrincat, that's fine with me too. But I mean, yeah, he's not that he's a power play merchant, but he's very good on the power play. That would help a lot, considering the Jets have gone on lots of cold spells on the power play. It's not just one. It's not like this is the one-time thing. They've had a couple spells where they've been,
for sure.
Yeah. They've been really hot, and then they get really cold, and then it's like they'll go like 2 for 5, and then they'll have a game where they go 3 for 4, and you're like, oh wow, maybe we're trending in the right direction, and then we hit the All-Star break and it's 1 for 20. But I just think that you can never have enough goal scoring, so having him on the team would be good. But yeah, I mean, like we said, if we could have Meyer, we'd probably have Meyer instead. But yeah, if we have to give up other things for DeBrincat, I think as Jets fans, I think we could also just go, you know what, that's fine. And to your point, Connor, about the Sens not wanting to re-sign him, I'm wondering if, because he won't want to re-sign, maybe their whole thought process of like not wanting to push forward for this year and wanting to buy at the deadline might change if by in a month from now they look and go, we haven't heard we got nothing for him, we don't want to lose him in the offseason. It would also be the most sense thing ever to just lose him in the offseason for nothing.
Right.
But if they actually are trying to be smarter about how they interact with players and their asset management is the word I was looking for, then they should be trying to trade him at the deadline if they haven't even started talking about an extension.
Yeah, 100%. It's a very opportunistic view of things too, where it's not necessarily a given, but it's an all avenues open sort of deal. So yeah, obviously those are the two biggest names, and we're going to get into now the secondary trade pieces. So like the ones that are, second or third editions, or better than depth, but there's some uncertainty there. But yeah, we're going to get into that. But first, we are just going to quickly hear a message from our sponsors, and we will be right back. Are you ready for the biggest Sunday in sports? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting partner of Super Bowl 57, has all the Super Bowl action you need. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get in on the Super Bowl 57 excitement with DraftKings Happy Hour Super Boosts. Check the DraftKings Sportsbook every day between 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 5 to 8 p.m. Central to see what prop bet will be boosted. I'm personally picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, and I think Patrick Mahomes is probably going to come away with the MVP, but definitely keep an eye on Travis Kelce. He seems to be the main target there. So, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Hey Level Flight podcast fans, this time of year everyone's talking about making the big changes, which is all well and good, but most of the time it's pretty unrealistic. Even I've fallen into that, claiming it's time to go to the gym, but next thing you know it, I'm forearm deep in a bag of Chicago mixed popcorn. That being said, I found that actually the smallest changes to your routine can make the biggest impact, in the same way that you don't have to break the bank to make a big deal purchase. Even the smallest things can be a part of a big change, even if it's something you use every day. Like buying a pair of Raycons, for example. Raycon is premium audio at the perfect price point, so you can build great habits without breaking the bank. With their portability, your Raycons can be with you as you go for walks, head to the store, or whatever you might be doing. Too cold out? No worries, use them for your daily activities around the house. Whether you're looking for a pair of everyday earbuds, low latency gaming headphones, or a speaker with a battery that will last you all night at your next party, Raycon's got you covered. And yep, Raycons start at half the price of other premium audio brands. So you don't have to choose between products. You can get one of each, or a pair and a spare, and still pay less than you would with some of the other guys. Keep them at your desk, in your backpack, or wherever you'd find yourself needing a pair. Even if you know you'll love your Raycons as much as I do, Raycon wants to make sure you feel great about your purchase. They offer buy now, pay later options, and every purchase has an easy and free return guarantee. One of my favorite features of Raycons is how they can be fitted to your ear with custom gel tips. My ears can get sore sometimes with other headphones, but these fit perfectly. It also helps a ton when I'm working out too, and they're actually water and sweat resistant. If I'm going for a run, I'm going to sweat. Now I don't have to worry about the sweat getting into the earbuds. But my favorite feature though is their noise isolation. We're all students, so trying to study can be a bit tough if you're in a loud area. With Raycon's noise isolation, I can get to work and be as productive as my procrastinating self will let me be. So, are you ready to buy something small with big impact? Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to score 15% off. buyraycon.com/THPN. And we're back. Thanks again to our sponsors, DraftKings and Raycon. Let's jump back into this here. So, Tier 2. I'm actually going to start with, a name that's been around in the league for quite a while. James Van Riemsdyk, playing in Philly this year. He's got 21 points in 32 games. He's a UFA at the end of the season, but he's on an expiring $7 million deal, so it might be a situation of some retention there. His underlying numbers are really good this year, but he just doesn't seem to be getting the opportunities as much to shoot because he's still shooting a fairly reasonable percentage. So it's not like he's snake bitten or anything, but JVR is interesting because today on the Merrick show, and um, thanks from Nick for alerting me to this. Apparently, Elliott Friedman on the Merrick show said that the Jets have checked in there. There's a link there, and I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of what you're looking at with how the forward group is made up. So if you can get the money to work and look a little bit neater, it probably wouldn't cost all that much either. So once again, this is a secondary piece, so it's not like you're going out there, gung ho for JVR as your only move. But I don't hate the idea of bringing him in, for a fairly cheap cost.
Yeah, and if we look at what just happened like an hour before we jumped on with Vladimir Tarasenko, that salary was retained 50% and he was at 7.5 million. If the Jets can somehow buy their way to retaining 50% of JVR's salary, making it 3.5 million instead of 7, that would be a really solid add at the deadline. And like you said, his underlying numbers are great. He can provide balance throughout the top three lines. Could he play in a top six role alongside Dubois and Connor? Could he be the third wheel there? I don't know. But regardless, he could play on the third line with Adam Lowry. That fit is there. His play style just fits up and down the lineup. Like really, you can play him anywhere. And I like that's a good ad if you can get it for the right price with retention, because I don't know what the exact number is for how much money the Jets have, like the trade deadline cap space or whatever. But JVR taking up 7 million of it is not ideal, especially if you're gonna make a bigger splash like DeBrincat or Meyer, like we just talked about. So you would need it to be retained just a little bit, but yeah,
Yeah,
I do like it.
Yeah.
our projected deadline cap space is just over 9 million. So
Okay, so yeah, JVR taking up 7 out of 9 million is not ideal. Him
Yeah.
taking up 3.5 is
yeah,
much more ideal, because then you can
Yeah.
fit DeBrincat in there, or you can fit Meyer in there, and yeah, boom, there you go.
Yeah. As a secondary move, that's huge. As a former Leafs fan myself, I'm pretty accustomed to
Former,
JVR. As soon
former
as the Jets
Leafs
came
fan.
back, I swapped.
Okay, fair enough.
I, we won't get into that. It's the trade deadline episode. Anyway, but I'm very familiar with JVR. I've always been a fan of his play style. I just think that he, like both of you have said, I think he fits in this lineup wherever you need him to be. And I just like, if he can get back to shooting the puck more and getting some more offensive opportunities, I think that would be good for him and potentially the Jets, just as another piece to just be able to go out and rack up points and score. And I think he may attract some attention from teams while you're playing, so that leaves other guys open. And so I just think that I've always seen him as like more of an in front of the net play style kind of guy, as a bigger power forward. So I just think that yes, he does shoot the puck and he likes to find open spaces, but just as another guy that might get you a couple greasy goals throughout the year, or as I like to call them, greasy goals, where you're scoring in front of the net and banging home rebounds and you're deflecting pucks and you're getting in dirty areas. I think that would be good, because there's a lot of times this season where yes, the Jets score, like when they played the Blues, a lot of, other than the goal from Josh Morrissey's second goal, where it was kind of a weird deflection, everything else was like free shots on net, which unless you're playing really nice hockey where you're passing the puck quite frequently and you're just making lots of good reads, it's not going to happen very often. So if you can find somebody that likes to score in front of the net, like another Adam Lowry, or how we've seen Pierre-Luc Dubois kind of do that a little bit, I think that would be good for keeping the Jets in a good place to just continue to keep scoring and not have us go on these huge non-scoring droughts.
yeah,
You
and
go ahead, Brandon.
it's one of those situations where you could, like, I'm looking at the lines today, and so they're back to somewhat normal. So as of today, you've got Connor Dubois Perfetti on the top line, Ehlers Scheifele Wheeler, and then Barron Lowry Kuhlman, Manalainen Stenlund Appleton. So obviously the easiest thing to swap out here is Kuhlman on the third line, with either JVR or JVR slots in somewhere in the top six, and a Wheeler gets bumped down. Then Barron, Lowry, Wheeler is a great line too. So um, this is the situation where even if you add above the line that is going to be adjusted, you are going to be having a trickle down depth addition.
Yeah, and JVR playing alongside Ehlers and Scheifele would be the perfect, like, either you want an all grinder line or you want it split up. So Scheifele's the sniper, he's shooting 23% this year. Ehlers is the playmaking zone entry guy that's going to get you the puck in the offensive zone in the first place. And then JVR is the net front deflections, bang home the rebounds guy. That line could fit really well together. I really like Connor Dubois Perfetti, so I'm glad that that's back. I'm glad we're not dealing with the mess that was the lines at the start of the St. Louis game.
Ehlers on the fourth line.
Yeah, no. But yeah, JVR could fit anywhere in the top six, bottom six, whatever. I need salary retained for me to make it work. But yeah, I think we all like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the topic of salary retention, I actually wrote about this guy. It came out today. Brock
Nice
Besser
plug.
from Vancouver. And I know I got a lot of blowback on this one because a lot of people do not like the injury history. They don't like the salary, and I agree with them fully. So for right now, he's making over $6 million, which is
for 2 more years, right?
Too much. Definitely too much. He's a shooter, and he has hand and arm injuries. And you don't know what Vancouver's willing to retain. Excuse me. But no, like, you're getting a big time risk there. But if he rebounds to what he's doing, because he in an off year he's got 30 points in 42 games, that's a big reward there.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people that's scared of the hand and wrist injuries or whatever he suffered in the offseason, because for most of what I know of Brock Besser, he's been a guy that generates enough offense to the point where his finishing carries him through, and he's a really good finishing top six, high end, middle six, low end, top six forward winger. His shooting percentage is down from 11.8% last year to 9.7%. Again, shooting percentage is the weirdest stat in hockey. So could that just be natural regression? Could that be his hand injury? We don't really know. And that's why this is such a big risk. But Besser at his best is worth the money that he's being paid right now. It's just he's not playing at his best. But like you said, Brian, if you take that risk and it pays off, that is probably the best possible secondary move the Jets can make.
Yeah.
But then there is the added risk that we talk about, and it scares the crap out of me because finishers with hand injuries just
doesn't end
count
up
me
well.
out. Yeah,
it's never a good thing.
But that's where I stand. It could really pay off and be probably the best secondary move that we will discuss, but it also has the risk to not pay off at all, which is why salary retained is such a huge aspect of it.
Yeah, this is a big, high risk, high reward kind of a move. And personally for me, I'm not like, if it works, great. Personally for me, I don't know how much I feel about having Besser or making the deal. I feel a little bit better if the Canucks are willing to retain, but at this current moment, we don't really know what they're willing to do in that case. And so I'm kind of, if the Jets make the move, by all means, fine. Hopefully it works out. But for my personal taste, I'd probably steer a little bit away from this move. But again, if let's say they make the move, Besser's hand, wrist, whatever the case may be, injury history just kind of goes out the window. He starts playing well, then I'll shut my mouth and just let it be, and and I'll just say, okay, this is good depth goal scoring and this is going to work, and we're only paying them like $3 million. But
yeah,
if you think about it, like if you really look at the trade and you look at how he's performed this season, for me, I kind of would just steer away from him. But Again, if this is a secondary move or if this is a tertiary move, like if this is the third move the Jets make and they go for Meyer and somehow they make it work with anybody else plus Besser, okay, then I'll live with it and let it be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And well, interestingly enough, I mean, obviously everyone knows that Vancouver's kind of all over the place this year. Sticking with Vancouver, Connor Garland has reportedly been quote unquote available for forever.
Yeah.
But he's another guy who's got term, got a little bit of contract left there, over 4 per season. But he's someone who adds a lot of value, at 5-on-5 on the power play. Um, he has scored more than he is this year in the past, but that seems like a trend for players on Vancouver, except Bo Horvat, apparently.
Yeah.
But he's probably got more to give. He's probably a solid middle six type guy. I don't have a lot of thought on him aside from he's been fairly decent his entire NHL career, especially after his first season after he came to Vancouver, he had over 70 points. So it's
Yeah, I don't have any really strong thoughts on Garland either. This is a move I'd like to see them do in the offseason rather than at the deadline
Yeah.
because of the term that you mentioned. He's got 4 years left at 4.9, I believe, somewhere in that range, somewhere around 5.
Let's check that.
Yeah, double check it. His play driving is there. Like what is he, like 5'8"?
yeah.
As like he's very small,
Yeah.
very small player.
5'10".
So 5, that's generous.
I
don't know, but I'm not out here measuring him like up and down. But he looks very small on the ice. He's a small forward. He's the complete opposite of JVR. And the forwards that the Jets have been linked to, like JVR now, Nick Ritchie, Timo Meyer, these are all big power forwards. So I don't think the Jets would go after a 5'10" Connor Garland. But he arguably drives play better than JVR. So it doesn't even really matter how you drive play or how you look doing it. If you do it, you do it, right? So that's a move I'd like to see them do in the offseason. I don't know about at the deadline, but again, another good middle six ad for as long as the Jets have this middle six forward issue, his name will come up.
Yep. Like Connor said, I don't have huge either yes, no thoughts on Connor Garland. I'm kind of like, well, if you make the move, you make the move. At 4.950 until 25-26, I'm kind of like maybe that kind of steers me away a little bit, even in the off season. Like even when you have more time to restructure the roster, I'd kind of even stick away from that. But at 5 foot, whatever he may be, 5'8", 5'10", we're kind of seeing a league where big power forwards still are important in the game, but where Connor Garland is different is he's small, but like Connor said, he drives the game. And so size may not matter in this case, but I mean, just at almost $5 million for another, what is that? 3 years after
after
4,
this one,
it's 3 after this. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, do I really want to be paying that for a guy who will probably sit in our middle six for that long? I know we just talked about paying good players, and he is a pretty decent player, but I don't know if the price tag justifies what he would bring to the table. Like I would think that $5 million would be better spent elsewhere, but that's my personal opinion. And so I don't know if the Jets make this move. I hope it's not either the main move or even the secondary move. To me, I think a move for Connor Garland would be instead of Besser, and we've gone out and gotten somebody else instead. And so for me, again, with the Besser deal, if they came somehow in a package, I'm hoping that there's been another deal on top of those two.
Yeah, I think that's the way to look at a lot of these names too, which is similar to the next one here. Another player who's actually been linked, courtesy of the fourth period, but Max Domi from Chicago. He's got offensive value definitely in the middle six. He hasn't played defense in years, but there really hasn't been much out there in terms of price that has sort of been asked for yet. So we don't really know what they're wanting. Probably not overly much, given the fact that he's been solid. He's got 35 points this season already. but he's not, a premier offensive player demanding these astronomical costs. Um, but no, he takes a lot of penalties, which, I mean, the last name, really that's self-explanatory.
He has to.
But he is someone who has actually been linked in terms of interest. Um, Once again, if he's a secondary move in addition to a Meyer or something, I'd be quite happy with that deadline. Because I mean, Domi's played both center and wing as well, so it gives you a little bit of lineup versatility down if there's an injury down the stretch.
I actually think Domi is one of the better options that the Jets can pursue at the deadline, just because his contract, I believe, is $3 million, and like we said, he produces offensively. You put him on a line with some defensively responsible players. Maybe you salvage some of that defensive value, but I really think that scoring is the biggest thing that the Jets need at the deadline, and that's what Max Domi does. He drives offense, he scores, he puts up points, and that'll help this team. And you worry about the defensive stuff later. You're not acquiring Max Domi to put him on the penalty kill. Like, you're putting him in good offensive spots. No.
But wait,
start.
he has to be on the penalty kill.
No, he does not. Well done.
To play for Rick Bonus, you have to be on the penalty kill. That it doesn't work any other way.
Right. I forgot you have to be a two-way player. No, he would be a good ad in my mind, just because we've identified that scoring is the biggest need, and that's what he does, is he creates offense. And I'll worry about the defensive stuff later.
Yeah, we have enough guys on this team that play all defense and no offense. Like, I personally don't think we have enough guys that just play offense. Like, I get you have Kyle Connor,
I might disagree with that.
You need a balance, and I think they
well,
do.
there
the
is
extremes.
a balance.
There are a few guys that are, totally all offense. You have too many guys who are all defense and no offense. So you need to find a balance in between, right? So
no, for sure. Yeah. And I'm not saying that we don't need to find that balance, but for me, for the way that we've built the bottom six, it's all defense. That's the difference. This top six is all offense with a little bit of two-way play depending on who you're talking about. And then you look at the bottom six and you go, okay, this bottom six has no offense, right? And so if you can at least just add theoretically one player that like a Max Domi that you're not expecting to throw into the top six that would be comfortable playing in the bottom six, either on the center or on the left wing, I would be very much okay with that. Yeah, you're acquiring him for his offense. He's not really going to play defense. I mean, maybe he will. Maybe now that he's finally on a team in the first time in a little bit that's actually like a playoff cup contender, maybe he'll try. But I don't know if it's an effort thing or if he just doesn't know what he's doing. But I don't want to question somebody like that. He's making $3 million. He knows what he's doing. But it may just be system wise. You never know, right? So,
right.
But in that case, at $3 million, this would be, if I had to rank them, it's probably JVR 1 for a secondary move, and then it's probably Max Domi. And I think it's clear that those two are at the top. And if you don't have to keep dropping down the list and touch Brock Besser or Connor Garland, personally for me, I think that's where you would go.
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? Like I think you don't want the Jets management to get discouraged if they're not taking the big swing and getting it, and then saying, well, if we're not taking big swings, what's the point? Like those incremental additions will help. Like they're not Timo Myers, they're not Alex DeBrincat, they're not Jacob Chikrins, they're not these big name guys, but what they're doing is they're filling out parts of your lineup that are causing issues, right? So
yeah,
something that's interesting though, and we're sticking with Chicago here, is I think it's mainly just because of the hometown connection. Connor's already shaking his head. Is the connection to Jonathan Taves. I am very much against this move, even as a secondary, because I think there's just better options. But there's a lot of people talking about it for a variety of reasons, face-offs, experience. But the fact of the matter is, Jonathan Taves is currently playing at the highest level, a third line center, but currently like at a fourth line center rate. He has a few more points than you would expect. He's got 28 points in 46 games, but that's not really his game. And he's never been that high point producer type of guy. He's always been the great two-way center, the leader on the ice. But to
The
be honest
Selke
with you,
Trophy winner
there's there's not a whole lot there that you would want to trade for and have to figure out the cap crunch that comes with the
at
salary.
10.5 million.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is the 10.5 million. Another thing, I'm currently running a poll. I can't see my phone, but this is not even me speaking. But I asked Twitter, Jets fans, if both Lowry and Taves had 1 year left on their contract at $3 million, equal contract value, they're both expiring at the end of the year. Who would you rather have? Adam Lowry's at 70% of the votes. Almost 200 people have voted.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom how against this I am if Jonathan Taves is going to be a fourth line center. And don't get me wrong, Adam Lowry's better than Jonathan Taves. I'm not saying like, oh, they should bump Lowry down. Lowry's having a better season than Taves. Underlying numbers, counting stats, whatever. Taves
Eye
is like a
test.
minus 30, whatever. But the $10.5 million cap hit, the fact that faceoffs are overblown. Like faceoffs are important in the minor sense of hockey, but you're not going to spend a second round pick for a fourth line faceoff specialist. It just makes absolutely no sense. And you're not going to move him to the wing because you can't take faceoffs from the wing, right? So you can't
Unless you get pushed out.
Right. So it's either you're moving Adam Lowry, who's having a great year, one of his best, down to the fourth line, or you're putting Taves on the wing and completely nullifying the fact that he's a good faceoff taker.
Yeah.
Regardless, it's terrible. And for 10 million and like probably a second round pick, it makes absolutely zero sense. I will be so mad if they go get Taves. I get it. I get the story. He's got a arena played after him. I'm going to play my own hockey game in that very arena tonight. I get it. He's a hometown boy. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely zero sense.
This is the definition of a let's wait till his contract expires and then we maybe look at going to get him in the offseason. This is other than the like where I said no to even Connor Garland in the offseason, this is one where I would actually say like I get the appeal of him coming home and whatever. I like those stories. It's great. I like guys playing in their hometowns, especially when they are here sometimes and they spend some time here anyways during the summer. It makes sense. But for me, this is like the definition of an off-season signing where his contract value or his value goes from quote unquote right now. Yes, his value isn't at 10.5 million, but he's making 10.5 million. And in the offseason, you can maybe throw 3 at him. Maybe as a hometown discount, you go 2.5 and say, hey, like you can come home, you can be here, you can end your career here. Let's go 1 year at 2.5 or 2 years at 3 or something. You up it a little bit more if you want to put more years on it. But at this stage of his career, he's not the same player. Like I'm sorry to say, as much as I love Jonathan Taves, if we were paying for like prime Jonathan Taves, then absolutely. And if the Hawks were not good and this was prime Taves, absolutely. I'd maybe advocate for this move a little bit more. But since coming back from that whole incident he had and playing again, he's just not the same. So he's starting to decline. And so if you're paying 10.5 million for a fourth line center, I think there's a little bit of an issue there. But I mean, I'm not against it. You won't hear anything from me if we hear in the offseason that they've offered him a contract. Right now, I just don't think this is the right time. There's other better players. There's Max Domi on his team that I'd rather go and trade for than like if I hear that the Jets are engaging in trade talks with the Blackhawks, it better be about Max Domi and not Jonathan Taves.
No, but I don't even know if this is a hot take, but if both Domi and Taves had $3 million contracts and were both expiring, I'd still rather they spend assets on Max Domi.
Probably, yeah.
Because
I'd probably agree with you on that.
Just the whole mindset of spending assets for a fourth line player, assets that are way too high. Like a second round pick for any fourth line player is way too high. Never mind the fact that everyone who's listening should go read Garrett Hole's thing on faceoffs at the 5 hole. It's his Substack. Did a great article on how much faceoffs really matter in the grand scheme of a hockey game. They do matter like very minusculely, but they really don't need to be asset spending things at the deadline. Like, you don't need to trade a 2 for a fourth line center who's going to win you an extra 3 faceoffs
Or
a
you
game.
throw him out there when you need to win a faceoff in the defensive end.
But like, again, he even explained in the article that even when you win a defensive faceoff, you're still the more likely team to get scored against in that very moment. So like, you still need to break the puck out. And we've talked about how the Jets struggle with zone exits. You still need to break the puck out. If you win a faceoff, you could go turn the puck over and the puck's in the back of your net 3 seconds later. But hey, you won the faceoff. Like, it really
you made that 10 mil.
Exactly. No, I would rather have Max Domi even at the same price.
Yeah, and let's be real. If there is a decision that needs to be made about, do we need to bring in, a veteran center who can win faceoffs? I wouldn't even put Taves on that list for someone who, like, if someone's, once again, you put out another poll asking if it's important if someone's won a cup before, if it matters. And I don't think it does, as long as everyone has like a set goal in mind. But if that is something they're looking for, now that we've seen that the Blues are willing to do a lot of, salary work and essentially just take a bunch of, secondary pieces in addition to a decent pick, and that this is now a situation where I would consider seeing if the cost is lowering for Ryan O'Reilly instead of Jonathan Toews. I would much rather Ryan O'Reilly than Jonathan Toews. I don't want either as like the moves, but if you're comparing the two, give me O'Reilly over Toews at the deadline any day if you can, find a way to swing a deal there. But that's the thing too, where I don't think that's the priority. That hasn't been really spoken of too much. Toews is really the only one that fits that, they need someone to win faceoffs mold, because no one else has really been brought up.
Yeah. And it's the whole the poll that you mentioned is at like 50-50, or it's 55 for yes, does winning a Stanley Cup matter? I'm one of those people that really don't think it does, because if it did, why didn't Tampa beat Colorado in the finals last year? If they knew how to win, they would have won, Yes, when you have a core like the Blackhawks that won for many years, in the moment, that core knows what it takes. But bringing in one player into a locker room, like, what is Jonathan Toews going to tell the Jets to do differently in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals against Seattle? Yeah. What is he like? Oh, guys, we really got to bear down here. Well, could have got that advice for free, but no. Like, I just don't get it. Like, maybe this is just ignorance on my part, because obviously I've never been in an NHL locker room, but I don't know what wisdom you could provide to a team that would make them approach a situation differently. The Jets know, they've been saying all year, Rick Bowness has been saying all year, that they know that they're a good team and what they need to do to be good.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Taves is going to come in and say, oh, you got to do this instead to win this playoff series, to win this playoff game. It just, when it's a 2-2 game and it's Game 7, you're going to try and win the game, and you know how.
Yeah. And most of these guys maybe haven't won a Stanley Cup, but they've probably played in some very important game that when they were 12 or 13 that meant something to them, and it was a quote unquote at that moment an important game.
They're professionals.
They're professionals. Yeah. They've played in big games before, whether it be in the NHL or not. That whole, as much as I sort of agree with the whole winning a Stanley Cup kind of helps, at the same time, it doesn't, because most of these guys have gone up through the ranks and probably played in some pretty important games. Like, Jordan Eberle's never won a Stanley Cup, but every time I think Jordan Eberle, I think that goal, was it against Russia that he scored?
Yeah.
With like with basically no left. Yeah. Like, I would consider Jordan Eberle to be a clutch player. He scored with 5.4 seconds left in the very important World Junior game. Has he won a Stanley Cup? As far as I'm aware, he hasn't. But I would still say he has experience in big games, because he showed up in a big moment.
Yeah.
Right? They're professionals. They'll figure it out, or they'll take past experiences from even when they were younger, like Jordan Eberle probably would. He'd probably think back to World Junior. Okay, what did we do? What did I do in that moment? Did I just stick to the fundamentals and just played my game? Probably not, because that was kind of a puck just fell to his stick and he put it in. But still, in this case, it doesn't really matter. Like you said, Connor, if it's a core, like if this Jets core was the same as the one that went to the Western Conference Final a couple years, not a couple years ago, that's a little bit of ways back. But then yes, they would have some experience and playoff experience. But since this isn't the same core, there's a bunch of different players here. There are pieces of that team, but it
Yeah, like
won't really
Shifley and
matter.
Wheeler are still here.
Yeah,
Well,
Like
Morrissey,
what
Ehlers, Connor.
yeah,
let Hellebuck, what would you put Jonathan Taves in that locker room in 2017-18? What changes? Do the
Yeah.
Jets win an extra game because Taves tells them, hey, don't get goalied by Marc-Andre Fleury?
well,
Like,
that's pretty
what?
hard to do.
Like, I just don't understand that thing.
Yeah,
Like, all of the things we've outlined aren't worth the assets that the Blackhawks are going to be asking. So,
it's stuff that also Bonus should have as a coach, right?
Yeah.
Like
that's why you have
should,
a veteran coach. Yeah.
He will bring the veteran experience to the locker room instead of having to go trade for a player that's making $10.5 million for. Yeah. Because you're already paying your coach, what is it, like $4 million or whatever for like you're already paying him money.
No.
Oh,
not
no.
enough for what he's done.
Yeah. I think Jets fans should be
brigade.
grateful.
Yep.
Hey.
Pay him more.
Yeah. So yeah, like there's more players that you could think of in terms of that secondary moves, like, you know, a Tyler Bertuzzi, there's a lot of them. Like Bertuzzi is interesting because we were going to talk about him initially, but I decided not to, purely because there's zero indication that he doesn't want to re-sign in Detroit. Detroit's very quiet in terms of how things are. Like they still have to sign Larkin, they still have to sign Bertuzzi. So I don't want to speculate that he's available and then get, like we did last week with with Dylan Strome, where we speculated that he may have been available because he had been healthy scratched a few weeks ago, and then he signed a 5-year extension. So not a great look on us. We are not insiders.
But yeah, we probably shouldn't get into stuff with Detroit, because look what happened when somebody asked somebody from Detroit what if he was going to want to resign, and it became a whole problem.
But just quickly here, and I want this to be sort of a quick hitter thing. So just quick thoughts on a few depth options that are going to play in your middle bottom six. They're not flashy, they're not the most exciting players, but they get the job done and they fill a role, right? So starting off here with Nick Bjugstad. I've written about him being an option for the Jets just because he's only making $900,000 this year, probably would only cost a mid-round pick, at most probably a second or a third. He's got 11 goals already this year, which would already be in the top 5 or top 6 for the Jets. So you're getting some offense there, but he's fairly responsible defensively. He plays both center and wing. And he's on a team that's going to want to sort of recoup assets. So I think he'd be something that the Jets should look at as like a third or fourth move if you're trying to get someone.
Yeah, Nick Bjugstad, I'm all aboard that. He's 6'6", 210 pounds, and he would add a scoring punch to the bottom six. And if they want to play a grinding defensive style, he can do that too. So I'm all in on it. The only thing that I'm hung up on is I've seen that a lot of teams are interested because of the salary. In a flat cap world, having a $900,000 salary makes it easy for a lot of contenders to go out and improve their own bottom six. So that may drive the price up and price his way. Like there is a price that I wouldn't pay for Nick Bjugstad.
Yeah.
But I don't think it gets to that point. But yeah, I'm all aboard getting him.
Yeah, I'm all aboard getting Bjugstad. I actually think that they should include, and I actually spoke about this with Connor a little bit, I think they should actually add Christian Fischer into the deal as well and see if they could get him as a package with Arizona. But I won't get into that. I'm a big Christian Fischer fan. I think he's a really good player. Because I would have also said Lawson Krause, but I don't think he's available. So
they just signed him, I think.
Yeah. So as Fischer would also be an RFA after this year, so you could at least look to either throw him in another deal in the offseason if you don't think that he fits the roster. But he's also only making like $1.25 million, I believe, off the top of my head. So him and Bjugstad coming in to be depth pieces that don't don't do much damage to the cap, I think would be pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. Another name that we've chatted about before recording and stuff is from the St. Louis Blues, Josh Levo. He's not flashy. He's smart. To use the classic hockey cliche, he plays the right way. Like he knows where to put himself. And he's cheap. He'd be good in the bottom six because he does actually have a fairly decent reputation of driving offense, even if he doesn't rack up points. He scored fairly decently in the AHL, but he'd be a good depth guy that would probably be a better option than at least two or three in our bottom six right now.
Yeah. This is another like Bukestad. If they want to play this certain style, they can do it and bring in people that can do it better. Josh Leivo is one of those guys. I'm all in for improving the bottom six because, frankly, they haven't got much production. Like they did a good job filling in when Ehlers and Wheeler were out for an extended period of time, but since those guys have come back, there hasn't been much of an offensive punch from the bottom six. So acquiring anyone that has any kind of finishing touch, like we talked about Domi, but these are much cheaper options that you can get for little to nothing, and they would improve the team. So I like Lievo as well as a player. Very smart, like you said, Brian.
Yeah.
Lievo's underrated, like very much underrated in my opinion. Like when he was with the Leafs, he was so disrespected by that franchise, and I feel so bad for him.
That doesn't sound like Toronto.
Yeah,
What?
unfortunately,
How would they do
they
that?
really didn't care about him, and it really sucks because he's a really good player, and I think he offers quite a bit to the team. So I think that bringing him in would be really, 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 really good for the Jets and the bottom six, because I think that he plays the style that they seem to like with the bottom six, but he would at least add a scoring touch. So I think that'd be big.
Yeah, and once again, another depth move, but going back to Detroit, which once again, no clue who is and who isn't available, it seems these days. But Pius Suter, he is he's just a solid player. He was solid in his rookie season with Chicago, wound up in Detroit. Started a little bit slow this year, but he's just fairly good on both sides of the puck. He can penalty kill. He's done it in the past. And he's just one of those guys that he would probably be a little bit more expensive to acquire than, say, a Bukestad or a Leivo. And he's going to count more against the cap because he's making 3.3 this year. But that being said, he earned that contract because he's played fairly well in his few seasons in the league. And this is something I don't see happening per se, but I think it's an under the radar candidate of maybe a player they look at as another smaller ad if Detroit's willing to part ways.
Yeah, like you said, he's a two-way. He's good on both sides of the puck, and he's 1 year removed from 15 goals, 36 points in 82 games. For a bottom six player, that's pretty freaking good. So I would be on board with that. Like you said, he's a great penalty killer. We can add to this amazing penalty kill that the Jets have created. It's like top 3 in the league or whatever the rate is at this current moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm all aboard. I've said that for every single bottom six ad because I don't like the bottom six. I'm all aboard improving the bottom six. Newsflash. But like, this is the fourth line center that you go spend assets on, or you move him to the wing because whatever, you don't like the way he takes faceoffs. That's up to the coaches. But
yeah,
this is the kind of guy you go and get, not a Jonathan Toews, like we said before. You spend less assets for a more niche addition and a more niche need in the bottom six. But yeah, Suter, Bukestad, Lievo, they're all great. If I had to choose one, I think I would go Bukestad just because of the salary, and I really like the way he plays, but I wouldn't mind the other two.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Suter's a good option. I'm a little bit more like I think I agree. Like I agree with you, Connor. I think Bjorkstad would be a better addition just because of the money. Because at 3.25, I'm kind of sitting here thinking a little bit expensive. But yeah, if you can lock him up for as much, maybe even less money for the future, I think that's also pretty important too.
Sure.
But like I'd probably say Bjorkstad over him, but he's a good player. He's like Brian's even said, he earned his money, and so like you could try to spend the assets on him, but then you'd really have to be worried about the cap space at that point, because if that's your additional move, like at the end of the deadline, then you got to try to crunch the numbers real quick instead of just going out for Nick Bjorkstad and just going throw a pick. We know this fits. Doesn't matter what we throw at him. So. Yeah, I mean, it would be good, but I think there are a little bit better value options, in my opinion. that we could go out and get over Suter. As much as I think he'd be a good addition, like I still think it would be good if the Jets went and grabbed him.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, like these are just there's been no official connections between any of these depth players. It's just they just make sense. But it's a matter of we're gonna find out fairly soon, I would think, especially because they haven't played in 11 days. So we're gonna see a lot of sort of the first few games here. A lot of pains coming out of that, a lot of slow play. Hopefully by Thursday when they visit Columbus, they can actually look like themselves again. But they start off again at the late 9 p.m. start on Saturday against the Hawks. Then you
If it's in the Super Bowl Sunday, just kidding.
but the
That's
weird
on
thing is
Sunday. I'm
though
just kidding.
too is after that game they don't play again until Tuesday. And then the Kraken come to town on Valentine's Day. And then
Good date
then they
opportunity.
hit the exactly.
Go
Then
watch
they
the
hit
Jets
the
lose.
road and head to Columbus for a game on Thursday. So we're gonna see hopefully by that Columbus game them looking like what they should. But you'll also know at that point if there's certain positions that need to be upgraded, and it's like a confirmation thing, right? So yeah, but we'll definitely
we know that they need upgrades.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
If
definitely
they don't upgrade, I'm mad.
like I honestly think if they don't upgrade, I'm fairly certain that it would become a season of what could have been.
Yeah, it would. And we outlined every player that we outlined fit a similar mold where it's either Timo Meyer, who's the number one player on the trade board, or it's a bunch of good middle six, cheaper scoring touch ads. Those are the ads that they need to make, or else it'll turn into a season of, what could have been. If they had added Timo Meyer, if they had added Brock Besser, could they have made a run?
Yeah.
If they lose in 6 games to Minnesota or Colorado or whoever finishes in the wild card spot, if they lose in 6 in the first round, then and they didn't make any ads, the offseason is going to be messy because there's a lot of contracts coming up next year. Dubois, what happens there? You got to go all in. We've identified the fit. We've identified the players. Let's go. Let's do it.
Absolutely. That's how you do it. If you want to win, you got to spend, right? So, you're not just going to stumble your way into winning games. And let's be real, the Jets stumbled their way into the All-Star break. And in the last month or so, there's been a lot of games that even with the win, they are not playing the way that they were when they were playing their best, right? So we're going to find out fairly quickly here that if they still have that other level or if they need someone else to give them a push. So that's really what we're looking at.
One more thing, coming off of an 11-day break,
yeah,
they should be able to return to that form. We can't use the fatigue excuse anymore. Here, like this is Chicago.
But now the
rustiness
9 p.m. start.
Now the rustiness. Rest versus rust. No, they needed the rest. But now there's no your team's fully healthy. Alperton's back. DeMello might be out. I don't know if we got confirmation on that, but
we're gonna get Morrissey Pionk, which is.
But still, this team, without Dylan DeMello, can still beat Chicago at home. We got and convincingly. So we got to start seeing that more consistently.
4-0 predicted. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not making predictions.
Oh
wow. But yeah, so we'll be back. On our regular recording schedule because I remembered to book the studio for next week.
Did you also book it for further weeks?
Yes, I did.
Every week.
Good. Yeah, because let's be real. Bit of a goof on that one on my part.
It happens.
Episode.
It's trade season. There's lots of other stuff happening.
Yeah.
So you gotta adapt. Good. You gotta adapt.
Yeah. But no, we'll be back next week, hopefully with a new pod on Thursday morning. So we'll be able to preview the Jets and Jackets on that night, but also have a little bit of a recap on what happened in the first 2 games, get a little bit of a read on how they came out of the break. But no, we always enjoy talking trades. Who knows, by the time the next pod comes out, we might have some sort of deal in place that maybe we'll be able to talk about that. But if not, over the next month,
hopefully
there's going to be a lot. So definitely keep an eye on our Twitter as well, because we'll be keeping up with that. If there's a big deal, we'll we might even do some sort of impromptu podcast, maybe even a live stream or something. But we'll keep you guys updated. So definitely follow us on on Twitter. Oh wow, he's got. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening to, Connor's got his @ now in the video portion of this. So go to YouTube and see that.
That's what
I'm not even
Connor
gonna type mine
Frabjack
in.
Mine's at YWG Brian, and Elliott's, yours is,
I think it's Elliott Rusin H1.
There you go.
I think, because my last name doesn't fit within the character limit. So
but no, follow all of us, follow the Level Flight account if you weren't already, on all the different things. So at Level Flight WPG. And yeah, so we're gonna wrap up for today, but we hope you enjoyed. Let us know if you think we missed anyone, because we'll be happy to discuss with you guys on Twitter or even in next week's episode about it. But
we'll keep throwing up polls too.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, come into my comments and flame me about my Jonathan Taves takes,
or just wait for Connor to throw up another poll about
yeah, you complain
who
about
should we rather trade for Pia Suter or Nick Bukestad.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now.
Perfect. But yeah, so until next week, we hope you enjoyed. So on behalf of myself, I'm with Connor again today, Elliott, and we will see you next week. And go Jets.
Go Jets.
Go Jets.
You've been listening to the Level Flight Podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network.